India is a vibrant democracy, and as a part of the democratic process, it is exposed to several forms of protests and related calls for disruption. Violent demonstrations may be a means of keeping a topic active for their proponents, but they carry a destructive impact on the economy and the investor sentiment of several sectors. For instance, the shutdown strike called by several unions across the country in September 2015 caused a loss of 25,000 crores, while even smaller strikes limited to states, such as the January 2018 Maharashtra Bandh over socio-economic issues, affected more than 35 lakh licensed businesses and caused losses worth 1,000 crores. A snapshot of the major demonstrations in the past year have included the ongoing farmer protests, the Jallikattu gatherings in Tamil Nadu, the Jat agitation, and even unrest linked to the arrest of a controversial godman. India Inc. is increasingly concerned over these strikes and the ability of the authorities to crack down against these elements. As the corporate sector seeks solutions, could they also be a part of the reconciliation process, is what today's episode of India Risk Report seeks to address.
Hello and welcome to another episode of India Risk Report, and in this episode we are going to look at social unrest and its impact on the Indian economy. The analysis and studies across the world have begun to indicate that India in particular suffers from a great deal of perils that impact on the growth story of the Indian economy, particularly things like riots, strikes, communal violence and things of that nature. Much of that has a massive impact on not just the exchequer, but on the lives of people, and most importantly, the efficiency of the very many multinationals that we want to continue to attract and keep them in India to give further boost to the Indian growth story. And to look at the issues in much greater detail, we have two experts with us. We have Mr. T.R. Kakkar, who is a former Commissioner of Police in Delhi, IPS officer with considerable experience in matters of internal and national security, and is also a war-wounded veteran from the Indian Army, somebody who has seen conflict, violence at its various forms, both as a senior police officer and as a young officer in the military, but most importantly, somebody who keeps abreast of the state of play in India, and I'm sure your views will be enlightening for all of us. So welcome on the show, sir. And we have Ms. Vidya Srinivasan, who is a senior vice president with GenPact, and she has some very strong views on how we as a country and as an economy which is wanting to target bigger and bigger growth numbers must address this problem that is a perpetual given almost in every year, that the kind of impact it has on our economy. I'll go straight to you with this saying that, you know, there are contradictory reports. On one, statistics reveal that the number of strikes have actually reduced from 2012. But at the same time, in the last couple of years, we have seen some very, very violent movements. I mean, there has been the Jat agitation in Haryana, which some figures say has cost the exchequer 20,000 crores. Another figure tells me that PhD Chamber of Commerce has estimated that it was 34,000 crores that this caused losses. Likewise, the Kaveri unrest in Bangalore last year now, again had an impact of 22,000 crores. Now, yes, those are figures about overall losses, but you working with a well-regarded company, how do you see this? How do you answer to your clients abroad that once again there is a standstill in a city because people are rioting for some reason which people abroad are not able to comprehend?
Actually, it's interesting. Labor unrest has actually gone down, at least in our industry. But instead, there is social unrest that's taken its place. And both are equally bad. In fact, I think the second is worse because it really touches on people who don't even believe in the cause. So yes, if you look at just 2017 and early part of 18, in all the cities we've gone through some kind of an upheaval, be it a movie, be it a criminal getting convicted who's a godman, be it water dispute. And so the way at least industries like us work is really we are perpetually in a state of preparedness when it comes to our business continuity. We really cannot afford any downtime. And so what we end up doing actually is, when we anticipate, we actually get our folks to come a day early, sleep in office, because the next day you don't know whether you'll get transport. And so it is a lot of preparedness. It's like a drill, and we've, fortunately or unfortunately, there are so many incidents that, you know, it's become an operating procedure for us.
Mr. Kakkar, sir, now I mean, here is the dilemma they suffer on a regular basis. You, as earlier as part of law enforcement agencies, must have also felt a certain degree of constraint that you're waiting to pounce into the situation, but you're not getting the go-ahead from the political leadership. Now, this is a classic case what happened in Haryana. I mean, every finger points to the civilian leadership in Haryana that did not order the police forces to move in effectively and use everything within their resources to stop the violence. And this has been happening again and again. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a better model that the politicians can adopt by trying to appear to their constituency that they are not really being too harsh on the people, but at the same time, there is the choice that they are also responsible and sworn guardians of the properties of the state.
Hesitatingly, I will now admit that a problem which can be sorted out, problem of this nature, whether it is social upheaval or it's industrial upheaval, which can be sorted out in days, goes on for months. And goes on for months, it is because the political masters either want to make something good out of that bad situation, or they have their other axes to grind. Any agitation cannot last for more than 2 or 3 days, because the police knows what is to be done. The law and machinery knows what exactly should be done, and they have the powers under the existing criminal laws. But they are not allowed to do that, because, as I told you, they are not allowed to do that. Now, why does the police officer, maybe the Director General of Police, and he could be the SP of the district, not take or hesitates to take action, is because his entire career is controlled by the political masters. There are very few police officers or the IAS officers who say, hell with you, we are going to do it in our own way.
So can they actually take action on their own without waiting for the go-ahead from the politicians?
Let me, for the advantage of our listeners, we have the Criminal Procedure Code. One is the Indian Penal Code, which
CRPC.
says what CRPC. Now, CRPC nowhere, I mean, I make a bold statement, nowhere mentions state government in the matter of maintenance of law and order. The CRPC mentions only the law and order machinery and and how they should proceed. But unfortunately, after our independence, something has crept in, that the politician controls everything.
Right.
He has no powers under the Criminal Procedure Code to interfere in the maintenance of law and order. A state chief minister, as a matter of fact, cannot even order registration of an FIR. They say, "Hum FIR karwa denge, hum ye karwa denge." Where is the power? But we listen to them. Listen to them.
Well, I mean, that's a separate debate altogether about the police and the. Quick question, short answer. How is it dealt with in your experience when these kind of upheavals take place in some countries abroad? Do you have any one good example you can give us that can work as a model?
Yeah, I think couple of pieces. I think the information reaches people faster. So, any place where there's an upheaval, whether you take UK where there was shooting outside the parliament, information reaches faster, the panic is subsided, and it's swift action. So you know what's happening, and even for people, they give out the names where possible, so there's no panic that's created. It doesn't have to be this huge drama. Over here, everything becomes into this big drama.
Okay, shortage of time, so we have to go in for a break, but we're going to come back after a break to look at some of the other key issues based on some of the assertions our guests have made, but that after a break. Welcome back. We are looking at social unrest and its impact on the economy and issues that seem to have many challenges for the industry and for those who implement the law. Mr. Kakkar, sir, I'd go back to a point that you were making. It is said that the handicap in dealing with various forms of social strife is the non-existence of a unified set of laws. Now, is that a correct statement?
No. We have enough laws to maintain law and order, provided the situation is left to be tackled to the law and order machinery. And there are no either directions or interference in the maintenance of law and order.
But that's not
and
the
we
case.
don't need any more laws. Let me tell you, we don't need any more. As it is, we have surplus laws as far as it concerns the maintenance of order. But for various reasons, the political masters want you to choose the place, choose the time, choose the manner in which you should do it. You know, while this criminal procedure code very nicely describes as to when you should have the lathi charge, when you should have a little tougher sort of means, and when you can open fire. Well, open fire is very simple now, please. When you see people destroying property or there is apprehension of death of a person, you can open fire. This is the criminal procedure code or the Indian Penal Code section 100, which says that. But where is it done? Property worth crores and crores of is destroyed, and yet no they don't. And they open fire under the pressures. Pressure of the media, pressure of some. Look at the Jat agitation. For the first few days, they had the run and they were doing whatever they wanted to. When the pressure from the media built up, then they started opening fire, and in the process 29 people were killed. If they had done the same thing in the beginning, if they had done, things would not have gone that far.
Very true, very true. But that's been the story so far.
That's been story all over.
All over. But Vidya, my question to you is that based on the current state of affairs, what proactive measures should the business community actually use amongst themselves as a standard operating procedure?
I think most people in our industry have continuity teams. They work with the security teams. There are industry forums where we share. I think there's no scrimping on that. You have to invest because you can't be ready when there is a problem at your doorstep. The other is obviously we invest in things like having our own centers that monitor. So you have CCTVs, etc. So create central command center. When there's a challenge, somebody is responding and someone is becoming the brain, because you can't do both at the same time. So that sort of planning is needed. I know it sounds a bit like a war, but when situations like this come, it is true, because you do have employees' safety at stake. You have, it's on the roads, etc. So it's really use every form of communication, and we've resorted to all kinds to make sure that your business continues, and that is really our most important variable, and employees.
So there is often a standard complaint from people who are caught up in this crossfire, people who are in these areas where riots and unrest takes place, that the first thing the government and the government agencies do, that they take a sweeping set of draconian moves. They cut off the internet connectivity, they cut off communication. So what happens is that while it does help the police and the government to get a grip on the situation and not let it escalate further when a decision has been taken that the police has to move in whichever form, whether for lathi charge or firing or whatever. But at the same time, a lot of other people who are caught up in this situation are in a precarious state, they are inconvenienced, and they could also become victims of rioting because they have no way to communicate to their near and dear ones that we are caught up in this area, which is a complete mess.
See, some draconian measures have to be adopted to avoid a bigger damage. Take for example, this chart agitation. Now, it was confined only to the 2 districts. Now, those 2 districts definitely had to be put under some sort of surveillance and some sort of restrictions, because today the social media messages spread very, and you know, it is, if they pass on the correct information, then it's okay, but most of the time the information that goes on the media under these circumstances on the social media is just for making you, bringing in that thing of violence in you, and then probably saying that your community is being totally finished, or your community
as
is
we
destroyed.
saw some years ago in Bangalore with the Northeasterners.
With the Northeasterners, and we saw here in the Northeast agitation also. So, this is what happens, and therefore, those restrictions have to be imposed, but the restrictions are imposed for making sure that the situation is brought under control. It perhaps does inconvenience certain people, but that cannot be avoided. That cannot be avoided.
Okay, Vidya, you know, you are, I mean, obviously from a top-notch company, and you're looking at the corporate sector, but there is another large organized sector where people work, and they don't necessarily work with multinationals to that effect. And there is an even bigger sector of people that work in the unorganized sector. Somehow the figures, they are saying jobs in the unorganized sector could soon rise to 93%. So, I was reading another article in an international magazine which said the same, that bulk of the people who are employed today, they don't have a salary slip, they don't have any other benefits of the organized sector, and the experience has shown, whether it's a terror attack or an uprising amongst people for whatever parochial or emotional reasons, the biggest hit are the small and medium enterprises. So, what is your view on how they should prepare for contingencies like this?
I think one is getting them to do the basics. I don't think some of them even maintain muster rolls or even pay the right way. You know, you pay below par, you pay below wage limit. It really starts from there. If you don't have that, how do you create a record? You know, don't you scrounge, don't pay on PF. I mean, it's not everyone, but there are situations where this is done. And so, if you don't bring them into that sector, if you don't bring them into that fold, how do you sort of make any sense of getting them into a better control? I think as corporates, what we can do, we obviously employ a lot of people in that tertiary sector, doing, you know, the housekeeping and that kind of work, you know, the people who run taxis for us. I think as corporates, we can push, at least to our sphere of influence. The government does what it does, but making sure you don't hire vendors who take those kind of practices, as well as ensuring that, you know, you give them the iCards, you have their numbers, and it's very tough because this is a floating population. But for us, that itself is a risk. You're employing someone whose antecedents are not known because there's no database that exists. So I think corporates can start at least by influencing the areas that they can, which is the tertiary sector that they employ.
A quick add-on to this is that, could we say that we could look at another factor in corporate social responsibility, that corporates which are caught up in the crossfire of such rioting and such unrest, eventually, when the matters settle, could be generous enough to give some support to all these support systems that are part of a semi-organized or unorganized sector, which the corporates need. You need your cabs,
Absolutely.
You need your housekeeping wallas, you need the guys to come and sweep and clean your complexes, and he may be part of an unorganized sector. So what is it that you would be willing to do to support them?
See, I think there is action that's already being taken. It's not always a reaction to an unpleasant situation. It is things like you know, helping their children with scholarship, because some of these kids drop out for reasons of not having money. It is about ensuring you teach them basic health, and we've all adopted in our areas places we go and help them, because a lot of this is one of the things we are now going to do, because is really, and we've got an agency which works on the kind of abuse that happens of children and the weaker sections.
Right.
They came, and we're going to actually do it for our tertiary sector, because they leave their children with others, and the kind of abuse that's happening.
That is part of the CSR.
That is part of CSR, but how would you respond? I mean, to go back to my question, how do you respond to support people who are equally victim of the social unrest and the crossfire? I mean, would you be willing to give something from your pocket?
We do already, and it's not because there is this whole Companies Act thing. I think we do whenever there's a situation, both financially, in many cases actually. And by the way, when when this whole Jat agitation happened, we actually did call our security guards, because a lot of them are from that community, and told them, don't believe everything that happens, because you're being misled.
See, then the industry will have to be very large-hearted. You see, whenever such agitations take place, they suffer.
Right.
And at least not just the unorganized sector, but also in the organized sector, their production suffers, they meet losses, the other side. So it will be very difficult for them really to be extra sort of supportive to the unorganized sector, because they have suffered already losses. But then if they really have funds enough to placate those people also, it's good enough.
Well, I mean, that is the big question. So I think that question we leave that open
industry
now, and let's see if we get any feedback from the industry on this. But thank you very much for being with us on this show. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, goodbye.